All right, guys, so we've got a freshie here. This is a 2023 Tacoma that we just built for a customer. Purchased it with the intent of building out a camper, so we were actually beginning to speak to him before purchasing the vehicle. He's got a family, so he decided to go with a long bed, and we're going to walk you through the entire build, from suspension, roof rack, and some of the accessories we added. So starting up top, we've got a Sherpa rack. This is the Animus rack. Cool little story about Sherpa and why we carry them. I met them out on the trail in Moab, a group of great guys, and I've stayed in touch with them as their business has grown, and they've actually been able to work with us to get exact lengths cut for each of the Alu-Cabs. So if you're interested in a roof rack that'll cut down on the wind noise, it'll improve your miles per gallon. The Sherpa is built better than any other rack that I've found on the market. Super solid, even though it's small. You don't need to cut racks down anymore. It's an exact perfect fit. I'll make sure George gets that for you guys so you guys can see how close it sits there. Up top, we've got a set of Max Tracks, and then we're using some GP Factor Max Trax latches to secure those. Those are going to provide really quick release, and they're also going to hold up once the Max Tracks get used and they start to warp or kind of break down over time after using them. The Max Trax pins tend to stick. These will allow you to kind of have just one really solid thread that makes them really easy to attach and secure. Back here, we just did the Alu-Cab table. Really good option. Table is the first thing you pull out at camp, so having it in a place that's easy to access instead of like on the bottom of your bed under your gear is going to be really nice. For the armor, the customer kind of just gave us the choice of doing it, and so we used kind of just the common formula that George and I have on our vehicles. We have a C4 hybrid front bumper, provides a lot of clearance. It's also going to provide a lot of structure and durability, but it's on the lighter side because it is mostly tube. We've got Baja Designs lights in it. We've got a Warn winch with synthetic line and a Factory 55 fairlead up here. And then we also have a C4 front skid plate. Moving over to the sliders, we've got Outgear Solution sliders. Big fan of these because of the angle that they have, how tight they fit to the vehicle, and overall the strength of them. One of the things that Outgear does that not every other slider manufacturer does is add in reinforcement back here. So especially on a long bed, this section of the slider oftentimes is pretty weak, and so adding that extra reinforcement is going to really make things structurally sound. Last piece of armor is going to be the Outgear Solutions rear bumper. This bumper Joe actually built for me that same trip I met the Sherpa guys in Moab. I've ran it for 3 years now. It's lighter than stock, stronger than stock, way more clearance than stock, and honestly, it's extremely affordable. So we like to use this bumper on almost every build we do. A lot of the other builds that you'll see, other campers and whatnot, they don't have the ability to put that spare tire up here. So what we can do is we can save a lot of weight back here and kind of offset that Alu-Cab weight by having your tire up on the door. All right, so the customer wanted to run some 35s, so we're going to jump into suspension. Before we do that, we're running a Yokohama Geolander G003. This is a 35-inch mud terrain. I've ran 3 sets of these on my truck. They are my favorite mud terrain. They stay pretty darn quiet until they really begin to wear. Traction's been great, but I've also ran these at 8 PSI and driven home from Arizona, and they didn't feather. They're just a really solid tire. We've also got a Relation Race Wheels wheel on here. This has a -12 offset. It's also a 17-inch wheel, and we did the 17s to clear the power brakes. We'll jump into that in a second, but as far as the suspension goes, it's one of my favorite parts about this truck. We're running a Total Chaos upper control arm, but we're also running Bilstein's 8112 kit. This kit is absolutely insane. The finish on them is beautiful. Installation on them, it's actually the easiest shock we've ever installed in the shop. Adjustability on them from a installation standpoint is pretty phenomenal, but also from the standpoint of user adjustability when you're out on the trail. So the beauty of this shock is that it's got 3 separate pistons, and it's got different zones that are going to allow the truck to handle significantly better. With the weight of the camper and the weight of the overland builds, we're always trying to kind of fine-tune that suspension to be able to handle and manage that weight while pushing the trucks. So outside of doing a long travel kit, which we offered the customer, he wanted to make it a little bit more modest, but try to get as much performance out as possible. So this 8112 kit has those different zones of adjustability. You have adjusters on the resis, and you've also got this jounce adjuster up here, and that's going to act like a hydro bump up front. I'm not aware of any other shock out there that has that capability, but I think it's going to really help with the ride of this heavy of a vehicle. So I mentioned the 17-inch wheel to make clearance for the power brakes. Just briefly on power brakes, guys. Again, we make these vehicles really heavy, and power brakes are going to add a tremendous amount of stopping power. They're 6-piston. All of the components that they use, they're using stainless, they're using beautiful billet calipers. And the rotor as well is huge. It's slotted and vaned, and it's going to provide a ton of cooling when you're going down that big mountain pass and you're on your brakes for a long period of time, right? It's not going to necessarily be a significant difference from a day-to-day standpoint, other than your truck's now going to actually stop. But it's on those big trips where you're coming down those large grades, or you're repeatedly on your brakes, that you're really going to feel the difference in improvement. So moving to the back, we have the 8100 with external bypasses. If you get in close, again, same beautiful finish, but you've got adjusters as well. We received them from Ian and Brittany over at WheelEveryWeekend, and Ian's a very talented shock tuner. So he's actually got custom valving on these front and rear, but then we can do the fine-tune adjustments, or the user can do fine-tune adjustments right here with clickers that move by hand. You don't need to get out any special tools. They're extremely adjustable. So depending on the terrain that you're going over, you'll be able to kind of dial the ride in. If you're a little heavier that trip, or you're a little lighter, you can soften things up, firm things up, depending on where you're going. In addition to the 8100s, we have the Archive Garage Leaf Pack. I ran this on my truck now for about 2.5 years testing them, and I just found that the ride quality was far superior to anything else that was out there. And that includes Deaver, which makes a really good quality product. Eric is extremely specialized in the Tacoma, and he's taken feedback from guys like me that use their truck, and Valley Taco in LA, and he's just been able to dial it in really well. In addition to that, we have their U-bolt flip kit and the Archive speed bump. That little extra bump stop is going to be really nice, just in case he does start to really push the vehicle, or he's really loaded up. You know, a lot of times we build these vehicles for performance, but also just safety in general, right? You make a mistake, you're properly set up to handle some of those mistakes. So in addition to a lot of the stuff we typically do in the shop, we actually sent the vehicle over to Sibi Built in Santa Ana. Jason's a really good friend, does incredible work. So we had them take care of the 35-inch tire fender trim. He did a great job on that. We had him do a DRT Fabrication cab relocation mount. We also had him do 529 gears, as well as his Sibi tune. So performance of the vehicle overall is going to be substantially improved over a stock Tacoma. So inside, we're using the STHQ mount to secure the Switch Pro's control panel. So this is going to give you a lot of function in terms of your electrical lighting needs. You've got the ability to dim them, you've got the ability to put them on strobe in case you've got people behind you and you want to make sure they can see you in the dust. But these STHQ mounts are pretty awesome. We're going to pop the hood, we're going to walk up front, and I'll show you what's under the hood. Under the hood, we did an X2 Power, it's factory size Group 24F battery. The reason we didn't upgrade the start battery to a larger size is that the truck simply doesn't need it. So we want to keep things as light as possible up here. The electrical setup in the camper has a lithium battery that's going to run his fridge and all the charging accessories in the camper. So we basically just need something that's going to be able to handle the big winch and the off-road lighting. Going any larger, you introduce maybe a battery cage, probably another 50 pounds over what this is. And a lot of people end up having sheet metal issues up here on this fender. So moving forward, we're going to keep things stock size and just use a really good battery. We've got STHQ billet battery terminals here. Those are going to allow us to cleanly add more things like the Switch Pro, like a compressor. So over here we've got the STHQ Switch Pro's mount. I personally like this mount a lot better because it leaves full access to your fuse box. A lot of the other mounts that folks use look really cool and it keeps your wiring looking really nice. However, you end up blocking your fuse box. So every install we try to do at this point, we try to leave this open so that it's easily accessible. We actually end up replacing a lot of these for folks when we do wire cleanup for them. We've got service loops over here. Every single cable is labeled so that if he does bring it to another shop, they'll be able to see exactly what we did, or if he decides he wants to add a light here or there in the 2 open slots that he has, he can quickly see which ones are available. Moving over to this side, we've got the ARB twin onboard compressor. We're using a sleeve mount, which is built incredibly well. You can shake the entire truck on it. It's all stainless, it's a nice thick gauge. And then of course, just tried and true ARB twin compressor. Really accessible up here for him to be able to air up quickly. So that wraps it up for the majority of the components aside from the camper. We're gonna do a quick little walkthrough, get some B-roll for you guys so you guys can see the camper. A couple things to point out that he went with is he's got the fireplace, he's got our best electrical package, which is a 100 amp hour battery. He's got dual solar panels and a Red Arc BCDC 1250. So that's gonna run his fridge that we've got in the back on this one. Basically forever, right? That battery is going to stay at 100% if you've got any sunlight at all. When you drive, it's going to charge that battery as fast as possible. But otherwise, typical Alu-Cab Canopy Camper build that we do. And we really like the way this one came together. Please let us know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys would like to see detailed Alu-Cab walkthroughs in terms of the camper and me going over some of the accessories, how they function, and what we like about them, let us know. We're going to start doing more and more of these videos as we have nice builds like this come through the shop. And appreciate you watching, appreciate the support over the few years. And if you guys need a vehicle, let us know.